recent videos and in our video we did in January, what in the world are they? What are these quote-unquote drones?
Here's what's coming. This information is going to come out. The way you respond to it can determine the future of humanity.
Yet here we are, it hasn't come out. Is this a deliberate stall by the government, or is there something we're missing?
When it gets to something that's actually real disclosure and the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, they will be ordered to not allow it on the air. I just taken a member of Congress in Mexico City where this sphere, the BUGA SPHERE, which landed near a little town called BUGA, Colombia. It almost certainly is of non-human origin. Why are all these starting to fly around? They seem to be getting activated because I think we're coming up against some big changes with the Earth. To my knowledge, this is the first time that an extraterrestrial artifact of this significance has been in non-secret government hands, ever. The big secret isn't the alien story. The big secret is that...
Are you ready to shine? Shine bright. Woohoo! Archangel Michael, Archangel Raphael, Archangel Gabriel, Archangel Uriel, higher self, higher team, and all angels, guide, and light workers, here for our highest good and the highest good of all. Please help me to help Dr. Greer today. Please help us to help consciousness today. Please help us to help all of humanity today for our highest good, for the highest good of all, or something even better. Woohoo!
Yeah, here we go.
I think that's the biggest smile I have ever seen on your face. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've been watching the skies lately, you're not alone. The Pentagon's calling them drones, whistleblowers say otherwise, and the White House is still locked in classified meetings. So why the silence? Today, we're cutting through the noise with Dr. Stephen Greer, founder of the Disclosure Project, and the man who's risked everything to expose the truth. From black flag false flags to leaked UFO tech, we're asking, is disclosure being sabotaged? And if the government won't act, what can you do right now? So welcome back to the show, Dr. Greer. Are you ready to shine?
Yeah, we're ready to go, baby. Let's go.
Woohoo! All right. So in recent videos and in our video we did in January, you've talked about disclosure being imminent. Yet here we are. It hasn't come out. Is this a deliberate stall by the government, or is there something we're missing?
Oh, there's a very complicated story behind that. So there was a whole group of people defecting from some of these black sites that we talked about. They were convinced not to release most of the evidence they have because it would be portrayed as too catastrophic. So the result of it was that that's all sitting on an offshore blockchain, and we're trying to still convince them to release that. Meanwhile, there's an engineer and some other folks with a major aerospace company that have a similar cache of information they're about to hand over to us. So this is a process that happens over and over again, where, as you know, if you go to our archive, dpiarchive.com.
Yeah, we'll put that link right there for everybody.
It's a huge collection. It's 35 years of intelligence and evidence. Over the years, many people have gotten right to the edge of pulling the curtain back on all of this, and they're either threatened or they're convinced not to do it because of the implications. Now, remember, the implications of this are so vast and profound that no aspect of life will be unchanged by it. And so a lot of people will be convinced it's too catastrophic to disclose it. Our argument is that it's catastrophic if it's secret, because you have covert illegal programs that are doing all manner of atrocities here and abroad. And they're also keeping from the public the technologies that would save the biosphere and eliminate poverty and give us a stable and just world. So the bottom line is that the secrecy is what's killing the planet. But the people who are looking 3 months, 6 months, maybe 3 or 4 years down the road, let's say you're the president, I'm saying this is with personal knowledge of this being the case, over many administrations. And you find out about this through our project. Eventually, they get to the edge of looking at the implications of it and say, too big to handle. I don't want to deal with it, or let's do with it the last few months of my administration. That has actually recently just happened. So part of the problem is.
And can you tell me what happened, even if you don't disclose names?
I will just say that I mentioned to you, there's a law enforcement group and a group of former special forces guys I'm working with who are ready to go and move on all these illegal sites, corporate and government, that are doing the worst of the atrocities against the ETs, but also against humans.
What are the atrocities? So I'm going to take us double off track, but what are we talking about?
Oh, well, the continued downing of extraterrestrial vehicles, the capture and torture of EBINs, extraterrestrial biological entities, the downing of civilian aircraft that are human when they get in the way of these other operations.
You're talking like the mystery disappearing aircraft over the oceans, for instance.
No, we're talking about over black sites over continental United States territory. And one of the teams that are defecting that we've handed over to law enforcement, when they set up an electromagnetic pulse to knock down an ET craft, they will not all the time, but not infrequently, hit a civilian smaller plane, not a jetliner, but more like a Cessna or a private jet or King Air, and they'll take it down with them. And this has happened and been confirmed many times. I've had people who are Delta Force guys weep over the fact that they have been part of these operations and are very upset by it. And then you have the whole programs that are dealing with human experimentation, abductions, genetic manipulation. Those are all being done by humans, not aliens. And those programs are monstrous. And there's a whole litany. Basically, if you were to take the entire federal penal code, I would say almost everything in the federal penal code, the transnational criminal organization running secret programs on UFOs and extraterrestrial matters has broken all of them and is continuing to break all of them. That's why it's such a big issue. And I'm not overstating this case. So the good news is there are members of Congress that we've been working with, as well as people in U.S. law enforcement, that have concluded that those operations are criminal, that they're a big RICO, racketeering influence corrupt organization, and that they need to be reined in. Now, coming to that conclusion has taken decades for me to get them to understand this. Getting them to move on it, that's another issue. So how do you get people to actually roll and do something about it? Because the entities that we're talking about are very powerful. And moreover, the United States government that you and I think of doesn't have the firepower of this secret government. The secret government have technologies reverse engineered from extraterrestrial spacecraft that are thousands of years more advanced than the best thing that we have in the way of, say, a B-2 stealth bomber, which just bombed Iran, right? That thing is from the 1980s. It is not nearly as advanced as the Lockheed Skunk Works and the Northrop Grumman and the EG&G and the Raytheon triangles and discs and octagons that are all man-made anti-gravity craft, and those are real. So what we're working on is trying to get the abuses that are taking place without the knowledge and consent of the Congress or the president. None of them know about these operations. They're not read in. And this is the hardest thing for the general public to understand. How can you be the president or the Gang of Eight, let's say the leaders of Congress that are responsible for black budget authorization and all this, and not know about it? Well, they don't. And this is what I've been saying to people since 1993 when I briefed the director of the CIA, and he was absolutely flummoxed because he and President Clinton had inquired about this issue and had been blown off and told to go away. Now, fast forward 32 years in 2025, there's enough people now that have concluded exactly what we were saying 30 years ago, but they are now trying to figure out, what do we do about it? In other words, this is not a trivial issue, Michael, because look at this. Imagine being a special forces team authorized to roll on let's say, Dugway Proving Grounds or the Edwards Air Force Base Complex in the Mojave Desert. And you roll up on this facility, and they have technologies that are anti-gravity, that are transdimensional, that can teleport objects, and that can target your Humvees and your helicopters with a bread box size electromagnetic pulse and scalar generator that will knock everything out of the sky and freeze your motors on all your devices, whether it's a tank or a Humvee or a Jeep or whatever it is. So there's a big technical problem that has to get looked at tactically. Let's call it tactical. There's a big strategic problem. And that is, this is why this whole group of people ready to come forward before this new administration was sworn in, they were convinced that it would be too catastrophic to release that material. And now they're trying to kind of do it through the system. But the system is rotten, and the system has ended up screwing them, basically. I won't go into many of the details, but I warned them of this 6 months ago. I said, this is a very big mistake. And now they're actually very much aware it's a mistake. And they were played, these very courageous men, they were played by the system, thinking that the system that was going to do this properly had integrity, when it isn't. It's a corrupt criminal organization. So I think that now the other part of it is that they're afraid because, they have children, they have families like we all do. And it is not it's not melodramatic at all to say that their lives are in peril for moving as far forward as they have. Now, the flip side of that is that there is a law enforcement group watching this that I'm advising and providing intel and evidence to. What that has resulted in is that they put an electronic net over everything we're doing, so that if someone moves on one of my whistleblowers, we catch them red-handed, and they're called dead to rights. So now that's caused us to be able to find out who there's a certain aerospace company that has a guy in charge of targeted assassinations that kills. Oh, yeah. And I mean, I've been targeted by them. That group have been exposed now. We got them dead to rights. We know the name of the head of security for that group. We know the man who has authorized the killing of innocent civilians, as well as their own personnel, for leaking information. And so this is actually there's a huge amount happening behind the scenes I can't talk about. But I will tell you that it has reached a crescendo where how this plays out is very much now gotten kicked up to a level where the oversight committees in the Congress, as well as key White House and law enforcement people at the highest level of the cabinet, know about this. The question is, are they going to authorize or stall in getting the solution put in place? So there's what's going on that you see in the media and the internet, which is 99% nonsense and false information, partial information. And there's what's really going on. I'm trying to give you a peek behind the curtain what's really going on, because I'm very involved with it. But and it's extremely complicated. And where it boils, where the rubber meets the road, is who's going to have the courage to go the distance on this, and the moral integrity, and also, the strategic sophistication. Because, when I've done things, for example, when you're dealing with someone like a president or the chairman of a key committee, we have this new briefing document, which, by the way, everyone can order. We have it available. We just made this available. First time in history that the president's briefing document's available to anyone who can read English. And here it is.
Holy smokes. But
it's redacted mildly, meaning there's a little bit of redaction dealing with methods and sources, let's say, people, individual names and things like that, and certain tactical, sensitive operational details, what are called OPSECs, operational security, military intelligence. But that's taken out, but everything else is in there, including much of the witness testimony and the new whistleblowers information. And everyone should order this, because if you want to know what's being handed off to the president and the key oversight people in the Congress and people in the cabinet, it's in here. That's it, right there.
how do we the people have not had much trust in our government, even before we were we the people. That's how we became in the
Yes,
US.
right.
How do we have it goes beyond trust and faith that someone in there is going to do this? Or how do the people who are, they go home to their own families, how are they willing to forgive me?
Right.
In the name of everyone and everything, because it's that
Well,
big.
well, look, for the last 4 years, when I've been meeting with people who are the top Senate Intelligence Committee guys and armed services, and as well as these law enforcement and military guys, the way they first approached me was, Dr. Greer, we're the have-nots. What do they mean? It meant that they were constitutionally should know about all this, but they've been blocked and they've been denied access. So I'm the bridge, the Disclosure Project, which I thank all of you for supporting. We've had enormous expenses in the last couple of years related to this, uncompensated. Unlike the other people, we don't charge to do briefings. We don't charge to do any of this. We fly whistleblowers into Washington on our nickel. So this is why we need people to donate to our site, drstephen.greer.com, and support us. I'm a retired emergency doctor, and enormous amounts of expenses related to this that the public don't know the details of, simply because we can't say who it is we're flying in to meet with whom. But that's what we're doing continuously. But these guys, the only reason they've been read in, as they say, or briefed, is that we put together the information. And then even other people like David Grush, he was working officially to look into this based on information I had provided his bosses. A lot of people don't know that. And that I met with him privately. And so those people, they got pretty close to this, but then a member of that investigative team a couple years ago, 2 or 3 years ago, was killed and assassinated. So it's created all kinds of complications in terms of people, going forward, because when something like that happens, it puts a chill in the system. So the only way this is going to be broken, I think, is that we, the people, and the Disclosure Project is a private, non-governmental effort, and we will not accept money from a government or corporation, ever. We're totally independent. I also will not sign a non-disclosure agreement, even if I'm going into a SCIF, a secure compartment information facility. Everything I do is I'm a free agent, and I keep myself clean and completely free of that encumbrance for a very good reason, because otherwise they're going to, and I'm not going to allow it. So we're an independent entity, but what that means is that ultimately, if you're going to have a democracy and you're going to have the rule of law, you have to work through the people who are in charge of the government. That's your government in Canada, my government here. We have feelers out to your new prime minister in Canada, as well as our people. But ultimately, that's the system we have to work through. Now, the question is, what's the alternative? I call it asymmetric disclosure. What does this mean? Asymmetric disclosure is when non-governmental entities like ours, with enough whistleblowers and evidence, come forward. And that's what we've continued to do. And it's been bit by bit by bit. What we really need to have is what got submarined back in the early winter last fall. And that is a group of people who are holding all the evidence, who work at the Lockheed Skunk Works in Northrop Grumman and these secret bases. And they come forward, hand it off. We have built a blockchain system where all of that would reside, and then everyone in the world could see it. And there's no one's going to keep me from doing that. We're going to do it. I don't care if they kill me. The media and the government to do something about it. So what I've been advocating is people stepping up to the plate, and they don't have to be identified. Look, I'm making a call right now for this. Someone can hand that material and information off to us and files, and they don't have to be identified. They can be anonymous. We'll do it, right? And then we'll contact all our base and our celebrity supporters and great guys like you that have a base that you can reach and say, hey, take a look at all this, right? And that's what we're asking for. But it'll also be handed off directly by me to senior people in the administration and Congress, because I have access to them. And that is how we need to have this happen. Something's got to happen to break the logjam, right? And they'll put enough pressure from we, the people. Let's get back to democracy here. We, the people. Something has to happen where we, the people, have enough influence and create enough pressure that the people who are the head of the government that we elect and appoint for once in 80 years do the right thing. I don't think they're going to do it so long as it's done quietly. And the reason is, when you get to the edge of this, and you get to the edge of pulling the trigger on something this big, since I've been involved from the President Clinton on, everyone gets to that edge and they back off because they realize, oh, damn, this is huge and massive. And they don't want to see that happen on their watch, because one of the things people forget is that when you're in that position, you don't want to manage a crisis this big. And we're talking about the biggest disclosure scandal in the history of the world, but you're also talking about the release of technologies that would be the most transformative, but some would say disruptive, in the history of the human species. So it is very consequential. And when people get their minds around it, that's when they first look into it, it's very sort of facile. They're so dilettantes, really. They're curious. They're curiosity guys, right? Whether it's a senator or a president. Then they find out that this is all real and that everything I've said for 30 years is true. Then they go, oh, shit. And then they have a coming to Jesus moment, as we used to say in the South. And they have this coming to Jesus moment.
I used that this week.
Yes. And they go, oh my God, what are we doing here? So I'm trying to give people some insight into what the psychological and emotional and intellectual lift, the evidence we have, the whistleblowers we have now. The question is, and we even have the tactical strike team ready to roll, hundreds of guys that would move on all these illegal sites and criminal activities in unison. It's got to get funded and authorized by the government, the legal government. Now, making that happen, I think, is going to best occur by the people weighing in and the people having enough evidence that it's unmistakable that they have to do something about it.
How do we, two key questions. One, take them in whichever order. One is, how do we get to that point as we, the people, to push the powers that be, which I guess aren't the powers that be, we'll go to the secret government in a minute, to push them into action? And secondly, forgive me for asking, and I don't mean this in a sensationalist way, and you're a dear friend, how are you still alive?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Well, the first part of it is that what everyone needs to do is write their member of parliament or their prime minister or their president, or if you're U.S., your 2 senators and your member of Congress, and say, well, look, we want something done about this. And I meet with members of the Senate and House all the time to say, we really need to hear from our constituents. So what it is that people are lazy and people don't take the action they need to. So you can't kvetch about the fact that the world is going tits up and is collapsing and then not do anything about it, right? I gave up my medical career and $600,000 a year as chairman of emergency medicine to do this for free. All right. So the least you can do is step up to the plate and exercise your rights as a citizen, right? But people aren't. So that's number one. Everyone can do that. Number 2 is 6 degrees of separation. There are people listening to your podcast right now that have people or family members or friends that are connected or have other people they know connected to these covert programs. Those people need to be networked to us. It can be done anonymously. We don't need to disclose their name publicly. Remember, if you go to our archive, dpiarchive.com, you'll see 700 and some whistleblowers. The names of all of them, except 120 or so, are redacted because they've asked to be confidential, but their information is in there. Now, that's what people need to do. They need to find people, though, with this asymmetric cash. Like, we're talking the evidence and photos and videos of the crash retrievals, of the bodies, of the craft, of the man-made craft, of the engineering of them. Now, there are people who have that. Those guys were supposed to come forward before the transition happened between Biden and Trump. They didn't because they got intercepted and threatened, and also were convinced it was too much to release. And that is something that has to stop. That's been going on for 80 years. And I think that at this point, with the internet and blockchain, we can receive that information. We have built that system. It could never be taken down. You'd have to take down the internet globally, and it will be known by billions of people. So that's what's got to happen. That would create, I hate to say it, enough of a firestorm and pressure. But in the meanwhile, we need people to be networking to those folks and finding more whistleblowers and people holding that kind of evidence. And there are people out there that have it. The other thing, your other question, I mean, the reason I'm still alive in part, the grace of God and angels, but the other is a tactical operation, which I started in the early 1990s. We call it a dead man trigger. And basically, I know it sounds scary, it's information and files that are hidden in our possession that would be released upon my death. And that would be catastrophic for that group. So it's sort of a countermeasure to them doing just flat out killing me. I mean, more than likely what they've been doing over the years is a type of psychological warfare against us, and slow torture, an injury here, a problem there. Let's give these people cancer. You know, we've had multiple people on my team at the same month got metastatic cancer. I was one of them. I had malignant melanoma. I was supposed to die first. So, I mean, it's that kind of just drip by drip kind of psyop. But I'm not somebody who can be intimidated by that, you know, although it's hard. You know, I have to be honest, it's hard to pick yourself up sometime after all that and then go forward. But that's where, you know, it's a spiritual shamanic journey for me almost to go from, you know, the normal life I had to this. But, you know, we're in it for the long haul. I point out, I just had my 70th birthday, and I started this project when I was 35. So for half of my biological life, I've been on the front lines of doing this.
When did you find out that there was, I don't know how to put it, a secret government? And what does that mean today? Is everything being run by the secret government and not by those we think are in charge?
Your last part of your question, yes. Anything of consequence is being run by a consortium of corporations and folks who operate outside of constitutional and legal constraints of all types. And not just in the United States, it's in Canada, it's all over the world. The same situation is the case in the United Kingdom. You know, back about 8 months ago, I was over in the United Kingdom meeting with some senior government folks there, and also some people from the European Union at a very high level. And it's the same situation there as here. So your head of the MI6, for example, who's their CIA, knows nothing of this, and has been denied any information. Same thing with their prime minister. I know for a fact that one of the prime ministers of Great Britain who did push on this, he was directly threatened to have him and his entire family killed, assassinated, directly. I know this for a personal fact. So that is the sort of thing that has to come to a screeching halt. But to which I say, what the hell do we have the FBI for? You know, pray tell, what's Scotland Yard for? What's the FBI for?
Secret Service.
Secret Service is way beyond anything the Secret Service can protect against. I know Secret Service guys. And there's a member of my team who's friends with the current director of the Secret Service right now. So, but I'm talking about, you know, people who are, look, if you took an oath to uphold the Constitution in the United States, every office holder and law enforcement officer takes an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. All right. In this case, the worst ones are domestic, and they are operating criminally and doing all manner of illegal activities, embezzling trillions of dollars from the coffers of the United States and other countries, drug running, human trafficking, abductions. The abductions are done by humans masquerading as aliens. All these things, as well as murder and treason. Ultimately, it's treasonous. Why, and I've known this, you asked the question, where I had it confirmed was after this long meeting with President Clinton's CIA director, because up until then, I knew there were covert programs dealing with UFOs. I knew that they were shadowy. I didn't know that there wasn't any oversight by the president or senior congressional so-called Gang of Eight people, the chairs of the Senate Intelligence and Armed Services and House Intelligence, Armed Services, et cetera. But it turned out that that was the case. And that was my coming of age. It was December 13th, 1993. I can remember it like it was yesterday. And what happened was that it was confirmed to me that the president and the director of the CIA and all his senior people, they had tried to find out about the issue and had been denied access and even threatened. So that's when I realized that we had a totally parallel secret government that was running everything of consequence on this and a constellation of other issues: technology, anti-gravity, free energy, zero-point energy, and some other issues. And so that's when my whole universe tilted, because I said, oh my God, because prior to that, here's the thinking. I thought, well, I'll put together the equivalent of this thing for President Clinton. And we did. We put together a 500 and some page briefing document for him, which he read assiduously. Yeah, I know for a fact. And he was wanting to he stood up an organization called Team Red. I don't know if I mentioned this to you before. Well, Team Red was basically President Clinton's attempt to get this illegal black program under control. So Team Black were these illegal programs that were denying him access. Team Red was a group of special forces guys, I know some of them, that were put together to take on Team Black. Team Blue was just the regular military that is not read into this. Those were the ones who came to me and said, we're the have-nots. And we're talking generals and top Green Beret operatives and people that you would think at the highest level of national security would know about this. They don't. This is the big mistake the public has made and the media has made. They don't understand that there is this criminal and constitutional entity that has way more power than the normal, let's say, legal government of the United States, Canada, UK, Russia even, whatever. That organization has the technology. Your power comes from your technology. Because, in every conflict, who wins? The one with the best toys, the one with the best technology. So you have the mainstream military of the United States. And when I have briefed people like the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff or the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, which is like the top military intelligence guy for the whole Pentagon, those guys, honest to God, knew nothing about the issue. And that's why when their jet fighters have encountered the man-made ones, like that Tic Tac and all that, they thought, oh my God, it's an alien ship. And I go, no, that's from the Lockheed Skunk Works. Now it's getting confirmed. Even members of Congress are saying that the Tic Tac was Lockheed's. Well, I said that in 2017. When all that footage, in 18, when all that footage came out, I said, that's not extraterrestrial, that's ours. And, here's another thing that we just released. This is, do you have this, Michael? This is an illustrated book.
No, I need to see that.
Oh my God, you've got to get this. So this has just come out, and it has dozens and dozens of crash retrieval cases and new whistleblower testimony, all illustrated. Both of these new books had just come out in the last few weeks or a couple months. People need to get these. Now, they're being done print on demand. But this one is, both of them are hard copy or soft copy. But this Disclosure and Illustrated History, the only cases in there are ones with named direct firsthand whistleblowers and witnesses. And it's dozens of crash retrievals where the bases, everything is in there. So, and they're beautifully illustrated in full color. Obviously, they're not photographs of the actual crash. That's what we're wanting. But these are the descriptions provided by whistleblowers and an artist who spent a lot of money to get these put into illustrated versions that faithfully represent what happened. And it includes cases all the way back to the 40s to the things that have just gotten revealed to us. Like when Michael Herrera had that big octagon ship in Indonesia that was abducting, they were packaging up humans for human experimentation, and his Marine group came across that. That's in here. So what it is that if you look at it, there's on one page there'll be the illustration, you see, and then on the other page you'll see the write-up that has a synopsis of the case and the whistleblower testimony. So now each case could be a book, honestly, but there are dozens and dozens in here, and it gives you an encyclopedic view of the whole matter going all the way back from the 40s to now. It's very interesting. And also in here are all the ones that are the man-made ones. And there's a part of it that shows you, here's what a man-made one looks like, here's what an extraterrestrial one looks like. So it's a very good kind of tutorial or a educational book for being able to distinguish between the man-made ones and the ET ones.
If members of Congress are going, oh yeah, that's a TikTok, now I get it, that's one of ours, does that mean we are a logarithmic step closer to disclosure at this point? If that's becoming, I don't know if mainstream is the right term in Congress, but
it is, of course. I mean, it's an iterative process. Here's what it is. You have people who think none of this could be true. Then they realize, well, maybe it is. Then they realize, oh, it really is. And then they begin the process of drilling down. And so it's taken great patience. And in my youthful exuberance, when I was in my mid-30s, I thought, oh, I'll put all this together for the president, and he'll do the right thing, and this will be resolved, and I can go back to my normal life, taking care of people shot in the head and all the fun stuff that emergency and trauma guys do. No, it turned out that it's way more difficult. It's a Promethean task and thankless, quite frankly. But we're getting to a point. I have never seen the level of activity in law enforcement and in military and also politically, where it's being taken very, very seriously. Now, the lagging indicator is the media. But remember, all media, left, right, center, big podcasts. Remember, I've been banned off Joe Rogan. I've been banned off Sean Ryan because I went too far exposing the truth. And there were people, handlers said, don't let him on again. And so
I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. In order for Joe Rogan to get his $100 million, he had to take my interview out of the lineup. Oh, Spotify wow. Said, oh, no, you don't. A couple of years ago, after me and Michael Herrera, the Marine who came across this man-made octagon anti-grav ship abducting people and crating them up for human experimentation at secret bases, went on Sean Ryan's show. He was called and threatened. He and his whole family and staff were threatened. And so I've been banned off of that show because he's too scared. And this is a Navy SEAL, by the way. So this is serious stuff. And so the media is never going. See, here's the other problem. This is why, as you know, a few months ago, I was on Khloe Kardashian's podcast and things like that. The reason I do that is because Khloe Kardashian has 305 million Instagram followers, and CNN has 200,000 people that look at CNN or whatever, right? Well, can you do math? Can anyone do math? I can do math. So when you have the media, the national security editors, and the corporate BlackRock, which actually is a cutout for the CIA, these big corporate entities that have CIA function, that own as equity managers huge interest in all these media companies, They are not going to let the whole truth out. They're going to let the false truth out. Here's what they're going to let out. UFOs are real. There are aliens out there. They're a threat to us, and we need to go to World War III, right? That's the narrative.
And give us money.
And give us more money, right? Give us more trillions for a war in space. That's the nonsense narrative that they will allow out, that people like Lou Elizondo and other charlatans keep pushing. Now, the fact is, if you tell the truth about it and pull the curtain back all the way, and you show people, oh, all this activity that you think was alien is actually being done by humans as a false flag operation, that they're not going to allow. That's a bridge too far. So the witnesses we have coming forward now that are whistleblowers are exposing not just the fact there are ETs out there that are totally benign and non-hostile, but that there are these masquerading spacecraft that are made by us that are engaged in all manner of terrifying activities. And that's what people are brainwashed with believing is alien. And that if you don't stick with that, if you stick with that narrative, you can be on 60 Minutes on CBS. If you don't stick with that narrative, you're blacklisted. So this gets to where we now need another call I'll put out to people listening. We need more influencers and celebrities, as crazy as this sounds, to be the tip of the spear of disclosure. Why? Because you cannot trust the BBC or the Canadian Broadcasting or CNN or Fox News, or I don't care, any of them. When it gets to something that's actually real disclosure and the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, they will be ordered to not allow it on the air. That is a fact. By the way, our TikTok channel just got canceled. My entire channel. I put a video up about, I just taken a member of Congress from the House Oversight Committee to Mexico City, where this sphere.
I was going to ask you the BUGA SPHERE.
The BUGA SPHERE, which was landed in Colombia, South America, near a little town called BUGA, B-U-G-A. And the BUGA SPHERE was then brought to Mexico City, and it's about this big. It almost certainly is of non-human origin. And I've examined it. I went there with a whole team of scientists. We took metal samples, all kinds of things.
What was it like? If you examined it, did you actually get to touch this thing, or?
Oh yeah, I held it, examined it. We took metal samples. We took some samples of some polymer material that were in some of the sort of where this fiber optics come out around the equator of it. You can put it up on the screen as I'm describing it. What you're going to see there, what we're wanting to do is carbon-14 dating on the polymer material that are in those little holes around the equator of the sphere. But we also took metal shavings from inside one of those tiny 4mm openings where the fiber optics or sensors are. And we're trying to get those analyzed. Now, we haven't quite set the lab testing up, but we're planning to get that done in the next few months so that we can find out, is the metal from Earth or from outer space? There are tests we can do to do that. And the carbon-14 dating would tell us how old it is. Is it something that's 5 years old or 4,000 years old, right? We don't know. The way when I examined it and I saw the CAT scans and x-rays and all the other tests that have been done in Mexico City, I have very little doubt that it's of non-human origin. Now, the question is, why are all these starting to fly around? Because there are multiple of them being seen all over the world. And they seem to be getting activated because I think we're coming up against some big changes with the Earth. That's my theory. Not to spook people, but that's what I think is happening.
Well, that's something we talk about in the spiritual circles, a shift in consciousness, some big change of humanity. And that's kind of overlapping. I'd like you, if you can go down that road in a minute, and I'd like to know, is this a chicken and the egg scenario, or is this consciousness itself revealing what needs to be revealed to help us in this shift?
Well, look, we like to look at things either or and linearly, and it's not linear. So let's back it up a minute. First of all, the whole creation is a conscious quantum hologram. It means it's all consciousness, it's all awake, and every point in space and time and every dimension is instantly integrated and connected. So when there are developments, we see the ephemera, we see the passing changes in a materialistic world, but behind it are many, many other dimensions, including the spiritual dimension moving. So as above, so below. So as you have this progression in consciousness and human development, you also have the progression in the material world. And so there's an interplay there that is not a linear one, but instantaneously like a quantum hologram, where it's all integrated and every point is interrelated to every other. And you drill in what you think is one area, and the whole is revealed. And that is because it's all a conscious quantum hologram. So it's like quantum entanglement, where they found that every point in space and time is interconnected without any latency of distance or time. But at the same time, the ultimate integrated field is consciousness. It's the spiritual conscious field. Now, it's quite clear that all the technologies that are ET can interface with that level of consciousness. Recently, the BUGA SPHERE was taken to a lab and certain resonant frequencies, and then people started chanting some mantras, and it started putting out electromagnetic energy. This is cool thing, this BUGA SPHERE. This is going to be in our next movie. And here's the other thing everyone needs to do. We have just gone into, we're doing production and post-production on a documentary about all this, about disclosure, the BUGA SPHERE, the Peruvian mummies, what's going on in Congress, what's going on with the strike team. It's going to be a 2-hour, I'm calling it right now, ultimate disclosure, because this is going to be the documentary. Unacknowledged had 850 million people see it. This needs to be bigger. It's going to have such explosive material. And we have a crowdfunding site for it. It's ultimatedisclosure.com. That we need your support, because this is going to be something that we haven't raised the funds for it, but we have, but we just pulled the trigger on it, and we're just taking it out of my savings.
And you said you want to get this out this fall, 2025.
Very quickly. Yes, because everything's moving so rapidly. We want this film to be something that galvanizes the public, that then will also galvanize governments and government leaders, everything, because it's going to have such explosive new whistleblowers in there. It's going to have people who have been operational at these sites where objects have been downed.
Anything that's going to be coming in the movie that we probably don't know at this point?
Yes, we have a whistleblower who was at a facility in Indiana where he was taken underground. He's a Green Beret, the highest special forces guys. And he was taken into what's called off-world technology office. And in this facility were all these ET objects, and he describes them, and that's going to all be in there. He was also out in Nevada, north of Nellis, where they were doing live fire exercises, conventional military operations, where there were triangles and spheres that came in, man-made ones, these, and that each time they would appear, they would take off and go back up towards Groom Lake and Pahut Mesa. And so we have a whole group of new whistleblowers who've been at these black sites who will be in this movie. And it's going to be very explosive, but it's also going to contain the information about the BUGA SPHERE. Now, I don't think, by the time the movie comes out, I'm not sure we'll have the scientific testing out. I'm a little disappointed in that, because these scientific labs, you have to get in line with their workflow. And for example, if we want to do just one metal test, if we put it in line, it takes a couple months. In order to get it done immediately, they have to interrupt their line. You have to pay an extra $10,000 per sample. So we'd have to pay like an extra $100,000 or $150,000, which we don't have. So it's time and money, right? But the nuts and bolts of what I do is very complicated and often very frustrating, because as an emergency doctor, I want everything, damn it, done yesterday, right? Boom, do it. My mantra was just do it in the ER, right? But dealing with bureaucracies and labs and, everything I would do in, 2 days takes 3 months, but that's just the way it is. But nevertheless, we have here's something about the BUGA SPHERE everybody needs to hear. When that thing landed, it weighed 2 kilograms. When I held it, it weighed 10.1 kilograms.
What does that mean? That's I don't even know what to ask about that.
Okay, let me tell you. That's why this thing is amazing, because if you understand, I understand the physics. I don't want to bore everyone. Everybody will go to sleep.
Please,
right now.
Bore us, because
Well, okay.
we're supposed to be that
yeah, but this is a general audience. And
conservation of mass and energy here.
Well, it is, but what you have to add into it is what is, quote, anti-gravity. It's not anti-gravity. It's mass cancellation. What does that mean? You set up at certain, let's say something weighs 10 kilograms. You can set up an electromagnetic frequency from within or outside the object, but usually from within, the propulsion system and the energy system. And at certain frequencies and voltages, it will cause, let me put this in really basic physics terms, the mass of what's in the proton and neutron, which is where you get your mass, it'll cause the angular momentum and spin to alter enough that it, relatively speaking, reduces the mass, and it can reduce it to the point of zero. Now, if it's zero, it literally vanishes in front of you. That's what an ET craft can do. And these BUGA spheres have been noted to be there and then vanish, not just speed off. So when this object landed, the BUGA sphere weighed about 2 kilograms or 4.5 pounds. Now it's 22, 23 pounds. But it did it as it began to die down, as it began to lose its energy. How did that happen? It ran into a high voltage power line and it got a 10,000 volt zap. There's a burn, there's a part of it on the outside, the lower equator, the South Pole, we call it, of the sphere, that is melted. And it must have shorted out its system. And so it didn't crash. It just came down slowly like this and landed. We have a video of it landing. And
is that a video that'll be in the documentary or something that's
yes.
out? Okay.
Yeah, it'll be in the documentary. And there's another one with a better footage that occurred about a month later in the same area, about 20 miles south of the original one. It just took off, but it didn't hit anything or bump into a power line, and it was not retrieved. The one that was retrieved, I have to say, to my knowledge, this is the first time that an extraterrestrial artifact of this significance has been in non-secret government hands ever. Now, the last night I was there, we had a member of Congress with me who was on the House Oversight Committee. You'll see this in the film. It's pretty astonishing. And he had to leave, and then I was leaving the next day. And that night, on that Saturday night, there was 2 armed police who showed up at the vault trying to steal the BUGA sphere out of its location. Now, it's under armed guard, but there's a guy who has a TV channel down there who studies UFOs named Jaime Maussan, and he was hosting us, but he's the one who has it in his possession right now and is protecting it. So I went on to our TikTok account and said, we just had this breach of security. Everyone needs to know this. I'm contacting my special forces guys to look at how to beef up security around this BUGA sphere. That little 1-minute thing went viral, had 2 million views, and our TikTok account was taken down.
What's interesting to me is I don't think of TikTok as, well, we think of TikTok as Chinese, not as a American, Canadian, or anything of the sort. So who took it down?
Well, the secret government, because they control all tech companies. See, this is people who think they're so cool and hip. Here's a little secret. Silicon Valley and Hollywood, there's an expression. They all talk like hippies, but act like fascists. Absolutely true. So I hate to tell, I'm not trying to pop anyone's balloon, but at a very senior level, all these tech companies, whether it's Verizon, Google, all of them, when it comes to something this sensitive, that covert secret government has full access and control over those systems, and they will take you down. So the idea that we're dealing with a free press and a free and open internet, no, it's not. I've had my stuff taken down so many times, I can't even tell you. Anybody exposing the truth about something running counter to the interest of this cabal are going to get deplatformed or blacklisted or whatever.
You're making me twitchy here, Dr. Greer.
So it's like, that's just the way it is. I mean, if you hit a certain number. So this is the problem. When Sean Ryan, the show I was on, the Navy SEAL military show, and Herrera was on, it hit such huge numbers that that's when he got threatened. And by the way, I tell people 3 things matter in this. 3, only 3. What's your intelligence? What's your level of integrity? And what's your courage? Okay, you can have intelligence but not have courage. You can have integrity where you're not bought off, but you don't have the courage to stick your neck out because it could be chopped off. So you've got to have both the intelligence and spirit to do this, but you've also have to have incorruptible integrity where you cannot be blackmailed or bribed or paid off, but you have to have the courage to go the distance. And this is where that last thing, courage, that's the hardest thing to come by. And when you start talking about your political class, your moneyed class, your privileged class, your elites, they're comfortable. Why do they want to rock the boat when they have all that money and power? And or if you're a public figure, and risk everything for the greater good. Now, the Green Beret guys I work with, they have walked that walk, right? But when you talk about your run-of-the-mill lawyer, politician, business guy, tech guy, media person, that ain't going to happen, Michael. I'm telling you. I mean, I'm not trying to be cynical. I'm just telling you, you know, I used to say in high school, the scum rises to the top of a pond. All right. So you're at the very top of this system. There's a lot of scum. There's a lot of, I hate to sound so harsh, but there are a lot of people who they're so corrupt and they're so corruptible, even if they're not corrupt. I mean, this was my coming to Jesus moment back when I was in 1992. The head of Army Intelligence, knowing what we were doing with CE5 contact, we were making contact. He knew we had made contact. He offered me $2 billion in 1992 not to do it. And I rebuffed him. I said, I'm not interested in that. I don't need that. I don't want that. Then, of course, all the threats came, the blackmail, the threat. You know, the latest thing that's all over, that's gone through all Capitol Hill. Get this. This is now been referred to FBI for criminal investigation. Luis Elizondo and some of his minions have told everyone in the Senate and House that they meet with in Pentagon that I'm a Russian agent.
That's new.
And that, no, and that, or the other one that's now hit is I'm a Mossad agent.
Yeah.
And the other one is that I'm running a pedophile cult. Okay.
I have heard that one.
Oh, no, this is the stuff they do all the time. So, and I tell people, yeah, it's like my top secret whistleblower 2.5 years ago. He was, I won't say where he is. He's not far from you, but he had been operational at a Nevada area where they were downing ET craft and also retrieving man-made UFOs. We were literally in the process of buying his ticket to fly him to Washington to meet with Senate Intelligence and Armed Services people, and then go over to that fake Aero office at the Pentagon, which was run by Dr. Kirkpatrick at the time, which we'll get into that in a minute. That's going to be in the movie. This is a big story right here. Big one. And we were preparing to bring him over. SUV, black vehicle shows up in front of his house. His wife's at work, and they show up. And they say, "Look at your phone." So he pulls his phone out, and he hit it, and it was filled with child pornography. Then he says, "Now go in the house and look at your computers." So they had embedded child pornography all over his devices, and they said, "If you take one more step toward disclosing the operational details of what we were doing out there, you're going to be in prison for the rest of your natural life, and you will never see your two young boys, his two children. Now, that has happened many, many times. Now, people greatly underestimate the level of criminal activity and frame-ups and viciousness this organization is capable of. But here's the rub. Because we now can prove that some of these operatives have said that I was a foreign agent of Russia or Mossad, totally false. That is a federal crime. Each time they did it, it's a felony. So that's been referred over to the FBI by me formally.
How do people who are going to come forward as a whistleblower, then I want to get to David Grush, I want to get to Dr. Kirkpatrick, and I need to get to, before we go, Peruvian mummies. But for the individual, so heaven forbid, cancel clear release, I go to release this show and somebody says, take a look at your phone, for instance. And hopefully I'm lower on the radar level than that. But what can be done at that point? Is it game over for a whistleblower? They can't do anything, because there's a level of courage that is like, well, that's my life and my family.
They can. And what's changed is that since that happened, there is a law enforcement group that is very secret, that has been fully read in by us, and they have their own resource and leads that they're pursuing based on information we provided. Very similar to what Grush had done, but these are major law enforcement, U.S. And anyone that approaches us, we notify them. They put an electronic net over them, which means that anyone who would show up and pull a trick like that, we'd catch them red-handed, and then they're going to prison. So that wasn't in place when that happened 2.5 years ago. This poor guy, and I said, look, I've had worse things done on me for 30 years. You just have to say, excuse my language, but I mean, my attitude is, go jump in a lake. But I'm one of these people that I cannot be intimidated by that kind of thing. I go, it's ridiculous. But the other thing is that I have enough profile and history on this that people expect me to be framed up like that. Remember, these guys, their Achilles heel is that they're secret, right? Because in that secrecy, things can happen. And part of the reason I'm still alive, you asked that question, is that, I don't know, something like 1.5 billion people have seen me in the media and podcasts and movies and shows over the years, right? And that creates its own level of protection, because if something happens to me like that, it's obvious to millions of people and it exposes them. Now, I didn't have the ability to extend that to these whistleblowers until a few months ago. Now there's a system in place where that can be done. And so, in fact, it's sort of it's our own little, let's just say it's a strategy. So if people come forward, anything like that happens, now whoever does it's going to be caught red-handed, and they're going to be put into this RICO case, this racketeering influence corrupt organization, because, and by the way, in a RICO case, you're guilty for everything everyone in that RICO has done, including treason and murder. And in the United States, you can be executed. So that is I know this is a very difficult conversation we're having right now, but that is where this is headed. Now, that operation is fully going. What isn't fully going is a team that can go and take command of these illegal bases and stop the atrocities, stop the murdering of ETs, stop the downing of craft that are man-made and
How
human.
often is that taking place, is your guess?
Well, the one site I was at 2 sites right before I was almost killed about 20 months ago. I was in a chopper over this classified area out in the high desert out west. And the one site, I was told once or twice a year they succeed in knocking down an ET vehicle. And that site had been there for 40 some years. So that's probably at least 100 ET craft. There was another one north of there that's a Northrop Grumman test facility, and that has had a similar number of strikes. Now, that doesn't count the Nevada test range north of Nellis Air Force Base. It doesn't include the Eglin complex in Florida. It doesn't include the outback in Pine Gap in Australia. It doesn't include the Dugway Proving Grounds out in Utah, which is the state-of-the-art facility in the entire system, frankly. It doesn't include on and on and on. So I'm just talking about these two sites. It's probably 150 to 200 ET craft have been downed. If they're not blown to smithereens, they can be studied for how they function. Any of the living ETs that are captured, this covert group euphemistically calls them refugees, but they're actually prisoners kept underground. And we have a good idea where they are. One of the objectives of the team, the strike team, would be to not only liberate the craft, the man-made craft, and prove we have them, but also the ET craft, but also if they're living ET still there, to liberate them.
It's a complicated question, but why would civilization, people's beings keep visiting here? I guess those numbers maybe are low compared to the visits, but why do they keep visiting at this point? If it's known you're going to be targeted.
Well, because ever since the dawn of the nuclear age in 1945, all these civilizations, and there are dozens, if not hundreds of them working together, they've known that we're on a path of either completely destroying the planet and an extinction level event for humanity, and or, both could happen, we become an interstellar civilization that's peaceful, using consciousness and higher principles spiritually and enlightenment, but also technologies that are completely at peace with the earth and aren't damaging the earth. So we're at this bifurcation, we're at this crossroads, and have been for decades. Now, the problem is, I don't think we have more than, at the outside, 1 or 2 years to resolve the issue. And I've known this for a long time. I think we have crossed some red lines where our technologies that humans have advanced so far that we're now an existential threat to other worlds. And I think that at a certain point, there is a universal right to self-defense. And so these civilizations at a certain point are going to have to say, hey, kids down there on Earth, enough. But see, that's the worst case scenario, is that there's an ET intervention. Because an ET intervention will be portrayed by the media as an alien invasion, even though it's really to try to save our own bacon and theirs. So this is why I'm pushing very hard. And that's why this movie, you all need to go and support ultimatedisclosure.com. We got to raise, $300,000-$400,000 in the next 3 months. So we just launched that site very recently. The other thing is we need to do CE5, more people. Why? Because when you do the meditation in higher consciousness and you contact the ETs, you're saying to them, there are enlightened, peaceful, nonviolent people on Earth who can be your bridge from your people to humanity. The US government is not at the stage where they are doing that. We, the people, can do it. And think how important that is from the eyes of the ETs, that people do that. This is why I want everyone to come. If you can get there, we're going to do a mass CE5 contact event in the desert in Arizona on Native American lands, September 19th, 20th, and 21st. And put the link up. And it'll be cool to have hundreds of people doing CE5. 2 of those nights, we're going to be out on this Native American land on the edge of Scottsdale, and we're going to be doing a group mass CE5, and it's going to be incredible.
What typically happens? We have so much to cover in this last little bit. What typically happens? And I just had my mind blown in that I woke up in the middle of the night and then I fell back asleep. I was so exhausted from a very long drive yesterday. I had my first, that I can recall, off-planet dream last night. And I woke up buzzing. I had a grounding. I sleep on a grounding mat. And I was putting my hand above the grounding mat and I could feel buzzing, put it down, discharge, buzzing. What in the world happened? Is this happening to more people, that we are getting exposed or an understanding, glimpses? What could that even be?
Exactly. It is that. And remember, a lucid dream is very similar to a deep meditative state, where you're in deep meditation when then you make contact and then the craft appear. Now, when they appear, it's often very quick in 3D because they're going to be targeted. They're going to be hit with these electromagnetic scalar weapons are all over the planet, in space, in the air, on the ground. So I realize that. But on the level of consciousness and spirit, and even with the phenomenon, all kinds of materialization happens. We were on a cruise ship in April, and we had a massive ET craft appear right over the ship that we got on an image. It was cloudy, but it came in the clouds as we're moving in this big cruise liner in the middle of the Caribbean. So this will be fun. I hope people can come to this. It's at the Wicopa resort there and at edge of Scottsdale in the desert. And people, I think there's still places available for people because that's going to be the 19th, 20th, and 21st of September.
I know the lands. I know the area. I know I'm the crazy guy who's gone barefoot through a lot of those lands within, it was well over 100 degrees, but there's already an energy there. So I can imagine just how special that will be. Let's briefly pivot from there. And then I want to go to David Grosh and Dr. Kirkpatrick. Thank you. Kirkpatrick, Peruvian Mummies.
Yes, well, some of those were in Mexico City when I was there with Congressman Burleson back in June, a couple months ago. And what I found with those, I looked at all the CAT scans and x-rays, and there were a couple there that we were able to handle. And those are real. Those are bodies. They're not paper mache. They're not fake. They're not human. Now, I don't know what they are. So what we did, we have a number of genetic samples that we got that we're looking into who can do the ancient DNA research on it. Ancient DNA is different from DNA from your saliva or blood, right? And it's a totally different specialty because once the DNA, it's a dead object, a body, it's a very different test. And the older it is, the more careful you have to be because of the denaturing of the DNA molecule. But what we're going to do is get all the CAT scans and x-rays have been done. We want to get the genome mapped of it, where we'll be able to see if it lights up to any known species, either extinct or living on Earth. To my knowledge, it won't. But until that's done, it's a supposition and not a proof. So that's what we'll be doing. I have concluded that those mummies are real. They're not human. They were very highly intelligent. And there are at least six different species that have been found in those caves in Peru. And not far from where the Nazca lines are. When the Nazca lines, you see it's like these formations on the earth that you can't tell what they are unless you're up in the sky. And they're very ancient. And I think these are the remnants of people who were from other civilizations in space that may have been on Earth for thousands of years that evolved on Earth, co-evolved with humans. But this is a supposition. So the other thing that needs to be done is really good carbon dating. Now, some of them have been. I know the one you'll see in the film, I'm picking up this hand, and the hand is 14 inches. Now, my hands are size 9 surgical gloves. They're the biggest they make. I have huge hands, and I have 14 quadruply wide feet. But this thing made my hand look like a little Japanese lady. And it was a tridactyl, 3 fingers. And we estimate that now there was no body with it. It was just a big hand. But I estimate the ET must have been, or the body of this creature, not proven to be ET yet, was probably 10 to 14 feet tall, huge. They also had metal embedded in them.
And there are stories of ancient beings on this planet of 10 to 14 feet tall. In fact, we
correct
in Greece and places at these buildings
yes.
in Peru, where correct. The doorways.
Yep. Right. See, what I'm certain of is that Earth has always had ET beings from other civilizations that have visited, been here for periods of time, and have had civilizations here that predate known human history, right? Because the Earth has had life for 700 million years, and Homo sapiens have been around for 400,000. Go do the math, right? It obviously, the Earth holds many mysteries. Well, these Peruvian mummies are one of them. And what's interesting is that some of them have metal plates in them that may have been a communication or a healing device. We're not sure. But some of them have what's called osmium. And osmium is an element that wasn't even discovered until 1903, but the bodies are 1,500 years old. And the one that's the big hand, we think, is around 4,000 or 5,000 years old. So modern human didn't even have that element identified. And it's a very rare element. So there's a lot of interesting science that needs to be done on those mummies. But I have concluded that they are absolutely real. They're biological. I've seen the CAT scans, the internal organs. Some of them have eggs in them because they actually reproduce through eggs and not mammalian. And there was one female that was pregnant that we have the CAT scans and all that for. So it's very interesting. Now, the fact that now the BUGA sphere is from Colombia, but it brings up this question of, in some areas of the world, are we going to find more and more? And are these BUGA spheres very ancient, being activated now, or are they something newer? We don't know until we can get them dated and evaluated. All I will say is the BUGA sphere, it's the way it's manufactured. Let me get into one other thing. An ET object, if we have, let's say, the fiber optics or components that we have in a device, it'll all be in pieces welded together or conduits. That's not the case here. The BUGA sphere is this a type of aluminum alloy that's harder than any space-age material we have. And remember, aluminum we didn't even have until the 1900s because it takes something like 10,000 degrees to smelt bauxite ore into aluminum. But this thing looks much older than that. We'll see. We don't know yet. And in the little apertures, openings around the equator that are these 4 millimeter, you see these things fine as a hair that are fiber optic. But they're not in a conduit. They're part and parcel of the metal itself. So what you find with ET materials, instead of them being mined and cobbled together, they're sort of materialized from a very elemental level of energy and matter.
Sounds like an energetic 3D printer.
Correct. And that is exactly how ET material, spacecraft, their suits, everything is made. So this BUGA sphere has all the insignia of something like that. So I found it very, very interesting. Never mind the fact that it changed its mass from 2 kilograms to 10 as it became de-energized. And that is a clear indication that the technology inside that thing, no one's gotten inside it, CAT scanned it, is related to some type of exotic form of energy source, and it's not radioactive, and some kind of anti-gravity or mass cancellation effect. So this is a very, very important investigation that we're just beginning on. But to the extent that we have that information, it will be in this new documentary. And that's very important.
Thank you. It's making me think of all the stories and photos of cone heads in Egypt, and all of these. They're well documented. What are we really looking at?
Right. Yes. Well, and that's another reason why we need the funding for this, because the testing alone on all the metal samples and the DNA testing on the mummies and the carbon-14 testing is going to be somewhere in the $50,000 range. And that's, just our cost, not labor, but just the cost of doing the lab tests. So we need people's help, very much so.
And I would definitely encourage everybody to help. Switching gears, I want to go to those few people just before the end, but it's occurring to me. You mentioned it last time. You keep using the word technology here for obvious reason. Are there technologies such as free energy that are popping up so often now that they're going to be impossible to tamp down even by a secret governmental organization?
Not that I've seen. I mean, theoretically, yes. And I have some people working on that. I don't know of anyone who has something operational that has made it through the gauntlet. Now, if they were to hand it off to my organization, it'd be out there. But the problem is, if you look at the Lost Century, which now is back, it's up. We've gotten the Lost Century on Amazon Prime and Tubi and everywhere, so you can see it for free. And people should look at the Lost Century. It was the last documentary we did that we crowdfunded. Thank all of you who supported that. But it's quite clear that the big problem isn't the technology, it's the human factor. And the human factor is that the inventors think that they're going to patent it, or they think they're going to monetize it as a secret or as a secret formula. And by keeping the operational details secret, they guarantee that it'll vanish, because it has to be pushed out open source, just like I would asymmetric disclosure with evidence from people at these black sites and covert programs. A technology like that has to come out en masse. Now, I do have a couple of people working with me now who have worked in secret government programs that are proposing to do just that with us. But that's just now being looked at in terms of, do they really have the capability, and how would the OPSECs, operational security, work around that, because these are folks who are of some significance and on the radar of the national security state.
Speaking of on the radar, we've got Elon Musk, we've got SpaceX, we've got UFOs. Are there connections? Is there an agenda? This is somebody who has, at least on the surface level, a lot of power and influence. Is there anything, not nefarious, but anything going on of interest here?
Well, that's a very complicated story. Those of you who follow what we're doing, you realize that after Mr. Musk got involved with the Trump administration, with Doge, he made some statements that he had an all-access pass through Northrop Grumman and Lockheed, and that the best technologies that exist are at SpaceX with his Falcon Heavy rocket. Now, that was a bold-faced lie. Now, whether it was because he was ignorant of what they actually have, or he was deceiving the president and the public, I don't know. But unfortunately, he made those statements, which meant when I went on some huge podcasts, one of which had 400 million people who saw it, I was asked, and I bluntly said, he's either doesn't know what he's talking about, in which he should remain silent, or he does know, and he is deceiving the public and the president on this. So either way, it's not good. So I called him out on that. And then subsequently, Mr. Trump pulled Elon Musk's pick to be NASA administrator, and that caused that relationship to blow up. That's the Cliff Note version of it. It's been a while since you and I spoke, so there's a lot of water's gone under the bridge. But my view of the regular space program, the people in most of those programs simply don't know these other technologies exist. There are some people who do, and they're very happy to let people believe that we're still in the 1940s with Wernher von Braun's rockets, right? Which is ludicrous. I mean, we have had, since October 1954, we had reverse engineered and mastered gravity control, anti-gravity. We have not needed a rocket or a jet since October 1954. Fact. So the space program.
People are going to say, how do we know that's fact? Please forgive me.
Well, because we have documentation and proof of man-made UFOs from the late 50s, and direct witness testimony and details. We also have the top Naval Research Lab scientist, Rick Foch, who was in the vault, who was on my team for years, who saw that documentation. And this is something that we've also notified law enforcement, that all those documents need to be retrieved so that people see that, in fact, we're now 70 plus years after the time where we needed surface roads, or where we needed, any sort of combustible jet fuel or rocket fuel. So that is something that I look at I had a friend who knew about all this, who worked for NASA Ames, a Dr. Richard Haynes. And you know what he said to me? He says, yes. He says, we're all white collar welfare. We're basically, and he says, we know that we're just, those of us who are in the know that we're just sort of, it's like the Truman Show. It's like with Jim Carrey, it's sort of a head fake. Oh, in this exciting, we have these rockets, boom. But on a deep level, certain people know. Now, most NASA administrators don't know this. Most people who work for NASA are sincere people doing the best they can with the technologies that they know exist. But there's this other level, a deeper level. And most people don't know that. And this is where I say, I don't know if Mr. Musk knows for a fact that Lockheed and Northrop Grumman have these other technologies, or he's just, arrogantly thinks that he has the best thing that there is out there. And he wants to believe that because that's how he sells his technology to the U.S. government for space missions. And I don't know. I mean, all I'm saying is he's either ignorant or he's deceiving people. Either way, he should remain silent until he gets read in properly or is willing to come out publicly and be honest. One or the other. So that's kind of what happened with that in Broglio. And then similarly, you mentioned Dr. Kirkpatrick at Arrow. We now have enough evidence and proof that Arrow, which was the office funded by Congress and mandated by the Pentagon to look into UAP UFOs, that Dr. Kirkpatrick, who's now over at Oak Ridge in Tennessee, he had taken a lot of the testimony and evidence that provided to him, and he hid it from Congress and buried it. I will tell you that there was a man who was a contractor, I can't say who he was or who he worked for, who was funded by our tax dollars to go out and image in broad daylight UAPs, and he had 1.5 terabytes of data and I've seen the images. I've seen and the radar and the sensors and the photographs. I think almost every one of the ones he captured were man-made ones, but they were still impressive. All of that went to Kirkpatrick when he was director of Arrow. All that evidence and all the testimony of materials we gave got buried by Kirkpatrick, not provided to Congress. And in fact, the new director of Arrow couldn't even find this material. So he absolutely broke the law and was part of a cover-up. Who ordered him to do that? That's a law enforcement issue, because what you do in a conspiracy, criminal conspiracy, is that who ordered Kirkpatrick to violate the mandate from the Senate and the House to investigate this and cover things up? Mr. Herrera, the Marine who saw that octagonal craft, the report that Kirkpatrick put out about that was absolutely falsified from what Herrera said. He said Herrera saw an ET craft when he said, no, it was clearly man-made. But see, let me hit this is going to be a really important point here to finish with. 2 points before we finish. One, the big secret isn't the alien story. The big secret is that covert secret government programs have these technologies, and they've been using them for decades in nefarious ways. They also are hiding the technologies that would save the biosphere and end poverty and give us a just and free civilization. Number two, the people who want this information out want all of it put out as if everything going on out there is alien. And that is the big deception, because if you accept that premise, which is a false one, then all the horrible things you hear about, like mutilations and abductions that have been done by covert human programs using man-made tech, those will be blamed on the aliens who will justify interplanetary war. That's the punchline. And that's why Kirkpatrick was ordered to hide the testimony and the evidence that this man who was paid by Arrow to go out and get it, because it showed our tech. And that's what they don't want revealed. And so I think this is the biggest part of the cover-up. And it's always been the biggest part of the cover-up. Two things. They want the technology hidden, and they want to be able to use it clandestinely in false flag operations. That's it. And if you expose this, which is what we did, then you get banned, like I did off Joe Rogan and Sean Ryan and everywhere else, because that is the big part of the secret, not the ET part of it. The other thing I want to mention is what we're going to try to do. And by the way, if you know anyone who is a great motion graphics person who's listening, let us know, because we want to put some of these cases into animation, but not cheesy, good stuff. And then the other thing we want to do is the crescendo of the film. When I was a boy, you talk about lucid dream. I'll end on this beautiful note. It was 1970, early 70s. So like more than 50 years ago. And maybe I was in my early 20s. And I had this beautiful lucid dream. And I was older, and I was out in the desert somewhere out west where I had never been at that time. And it looked like white sands, honestly. It was this white. And it was the whole U.S. military and government had pivoted towards this being totally dysfunctional, where the right hand doesn't know the left hand exists, to being resolved. And the military and the government were protecting the area for an open contact event. And I was there running the diplomatic, or assisting with the diplomatic effort, doing CE5 to contact the ETs.
I'm hearing Close Encounters. I'm hearing in my head, do, 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 do.
Well, it was daytime. And this beautiful, not very large, seamless egg-shaped craft comes out of a blue sky and descends and hovers, lands right above the ground. And ET elder comes out of this. And it's an open contact event, but the whole world's watching. Everyone on Earth it's like the moon landing, but it was a contact event. And it was this peaceful, beautiful, where this had gotten resolved, these problems. And we were starting a new era of open and peaceful contact with these civilizations instead of shooting them out of the sky. And it was this beautiful, and I was only 20, I think. I was about 20 years old. So that would have been 50 years ago. And it was so beautiful. And that is the vision I hold on to, because with all the dysfunction and craziness going on, when the day is done, that's where we have to end up. That we have to end up as a peaceful world, an enlightened world, a golden age of technology and peace. But also, we're being visited, and they're inviting us to go with them to explore the cosmos. But we have to become peaceful. We can't go out there with like a bunch of marauding primates. And so that is the huge task, is we have to do this peacefully and consciously. And that lucid dream is sort of what I see on the far horizon when I was little, or a young man at 20. But now I see it as coming. I see all the elements coming together. But this is a dangerous time right now. But I see all of that is potentially can happen. So we're going to end this film on a very visionary, positive note. And we want 1 billion people to see it, so they see, here's the problem. And I do this, Michael. Here's the problem. Here's the details. But here's the solution. And here's the future that we as humans will have on this beautiful planet. That's what we're working towards.
3 really, really quick questions. I want to respect your time, and we're going to hop off the line here real quickly. David Grush, what happened?
Well, he was not just an investigator who was undercover, and the people he was working for were the folks I was providing information to, and then I met with him privately, also, and then would encryptedly text him information about where to go, what bases were key, all this sort of thing. So that is sort of the history. When he ended up leaving that operation, because he was stripped of his top secret clearances, then he ended up jumping into bed with Lou Elizondo, which I think he realizes was a very big mistake. But that's water under the bridge, and he's still trying to help get this issue resolved. But I think that he's very young and made a lot of mistakes. I think when I first met him, he was 30 something. He was, I think, my youngest daughter's age or something. But he was in over his head, and he didn't know the landscape of who's out there in so-called ufology, and he jumped right into the arms of people who promised him fame and fortune. That's how that happened with Lou Elizondo, and it ended up being just a disaster for him. And And unfortunately, he then engaged in a number of activities that were criminal activities that are being looked at. So it's a very big problem. It's an unfortunate story. I always warn whistleblowers, be very careful who you begin to align with in this area, because 9 out of the 10 people out there are actually operatives for the secret government cabal. And someone who's lived and worked in a covert, very clandestine operation doesn't know that. And I've been involved with that world for 35 years. And you kind of, after a while, who's naughty and who's nice, and who's an operative and who isn't. So, he was a young man who I think made some mistakes, and maybe he can rectify those. We'll see,
Thanks. Second, can AI help us in some way in this disclosure process?
Yes. I mean, this is something we're looking at. I mean, we get these sort of evidence. Can AI be used to help not only sort it, but also what we really need? Because I don't even know how to do social media. People do it. We need someone who can use AI to get the message and the information out to the largest number of people. I don't know if it's at that point yet where it can be deployed for that purpose, but that's really what we need. We need something that could take really important testimony and summaries and get it out widely across the internet, websites, everything, but where it'd be legal, where you're not hacking, but where it gets something that if you did it, item by item by a human, would take forever. Now I'm way over my skis here. I know nothing about computers, I'll admit it. But if that were to be something that someone knows how to do, that would be enormously useful to us about now.
Excellent. We'll try to call them in and send them your way. And I think we all need to do our part. We all need to speak. We all need to speak with our Congress or whatever government with. So the last question I have, other than we're going to put up on the screen where everybody can go to find your information, is, and I know I've asked you this before, so please forgive me, I'm asking this again, based on that lucid dream, was Close Encounters real?
You mean the movie? Well, it was a docudrama, Hollywoodized, let's say, based on actual events that had happened. Yes. So, and, it was a great film that was from the 70s that Spielberg did. He then did the movie E.T., as you know. But then he had some things happen to him and his family by the secret government that tried to turn him towards the dark side. And then he started doing dark things. Basically, he had a home invasion that looked alien that wasn't. Well, I know his son, Max Spielberg. I've had dinner with him. And there's so much stuff I know about stuff like this. So we'd go on all day. But yeah, the basic movie was he relied heavily on Dr. J. Allen Hynek, who was an advisor on the film and made a little cameo appearance in the film, who had been head of Project Blue Book for the Air Force. And so many of the cases and the phenomenon, even the telepathic part of it, the psionic part of it, was based on actual case files. But then they turned it into a fictional Hollywood movie. And this is why I know 3 people who were in the White House screening room with Ronald Reagan, President Reagan, when that movie was shown. And at the end of it, President Reagan stood up and said, "There are only a couple people in this room who know how true to life that film actually is." That's what the president said.
I think we leave it on that perfect note. Yeah. So we've got your link. We'll put that up. We want to send everybody your way. We want to see this documentary this fall. I cannot thank you enough for the work.
And come to Arizona. Let's do CE5 together.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. I would love, love, love to get out there. I can't even imagine. Like I said, I know the lands. I know how it feels.
Well, everyone listening, try to join. And if you can't come in person, we're going to webinar the whole thing, day and night. So if you can't, you can be there virtually with your CE5 group. Get the CE5 Contact app. It's just called CE5 Contact. Practice the protocols. And if you can come, it'll be fantastic. But if you can't, you can do the webinar and be there all day during the sessions where I'm teaching remote viewing and meditation. But then at night, we're going to webinar that whole experience out under the stars. And so if you can't be there literally, you can be there virtually.
Count me in.
Okay, good.
Count
great.
me in. Are you hopeful for the future?
Yes, I think long term, this planet's going to be just amazing paradise. Short term, it's going to be bumpy, but hey, that's the nature of a big, what we call phase transition, where we're transitioning from one era to another.
Well, thank you so much. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get out all this information, check out CE5, get to the desert if you can, talk, and talk, so that we not only know we're not alone, we know we're not alone, and we get this out there. And above and beyond all else, shine bright. Woohoo!
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Greer.
Thank you. Appreciate your help getting the word out.
Wow isn't strong enough. I don't have the words. If you ask, Michael, this is a spiritual show, why do you have an amazing human being, Dr. Stephen Greer, on talking about full disclosure? Because to me, it is one of the most important topics of ever for humanity. Because if we realize who and what we are, if we realize our connection to the cosmos, it changes absolutely everything. On that note, if you want to shift today, if you want to bring your energy up, if you want to discover who you truly are at the highest level, come join us with the School of Mystics 4 Wednesdays each and every month, where we have teachings, we have attunements, we have energy transmissions, we have clearings, we have group intention meditations, and so much more live and just as powerful on the recording. Got that link down below to come join us with the School of Mystics. Depending on when you get this, there may even be a free month or a special offer in order to try. If you simply want to bring your energy up on a daily basis, I have a newsletter, don't be scared by that word, that is a daily energy transmission, short story and a transmission of energy to bring you up each and every day, plus attunements and so much more. That is Daily Woohoo. That's another link down below, dailywoohoo.com. I also have a program where you can learn how to channel, you can learn how to communicate with the other side, you can learn how to communicate with other species, with other beings beyond this biosphere even. That's automaticwriting.com, and we have live classes each and every month on that as well, automaticwriting.com. Here's a link to the next amazing show. Love you so much. Keep on shining bright. Woohoo! How does it get any better than this? Disclosure. That's how. And love. I send you love. I send you love. I send you love.